definitely did not have a good time fighting Kabloom. As I was rewatching the footage of my fight with Kabloom, I can definitely see that while some of its design choices weren't exactly the best it could have used, this one was more my fault. I didn't get what they were going for in the complicated script that they had put out for how the gameplay was supposed to work, and it seems like the complications just kind of screw the whole thing altogether. And what really hurts Kabloom is the very simplistic character art and complete lack of backstory to this boss fight. It almost feels like they just threw in Kabloom last minute just to justify having another guardian to this Wishstone, even though Pooh Bah the Pharaoh that we fought last level was doing the exact same thing. Maybe the Pharaoh planted Kabloom just to further dick over Wario, even though the level itself was long and meandering. The boss fight with Kabloom is a two-parter at the very least. The first one is a bit better than the inevitable second one, and that is that you just have to go into Space Wario form, shoot the weak points surrounding Kabloom until you can shoot the armor off of the flower, turning it from blue to red, and then you have to chase it around and hit it with the dragon form. This process doesn't work very well, just to put it lightly. What they intended for you to do was to use the seesaws on both sides of the room, and there are two at differing levels, in order to chase Kabloom. Because once you hit it with the dragon fire on the bottom floor, you then have to go and chase it above the arena in order to get the actual damage going. So you have to hit it twice for each damage, and it only has 3 HP, but even still, it can completely, even with that low amount of health, it can still end up tanking the boss fight pretty dang hard. Because trying to work well with the artist form is not exactly the easiest thing in the world. Because this was on an emulator, maybe my mouse wasn't exactly translating well to the stylus of the original DS, which is why it was causing such a problem. Because the artist form seems to be very unforgiving on what a square is supposed to be. If you make any sort of little mistakes in drawing the angles wrong on the square, then you could very easily just end up with a running poo instead of the block that you were hoping for. It's very exact, and it doesn't help in this game's favor, especially when it's very bad at explaining what you were supposed to be doing. Mostly because if you follow the thing that you thought that the developers were putting in to help you out in chasing Kabloom, then you can start figuring out that it's a bit more complicated and difficult than you thought in the first place. So, even though you're exactly doing the thing that you were supposed to, it's still kinda hard to get the damage going, even though you're doing the thing right in the first place. Because once I got to the final form, like you saw, the final point of damage, Kabloom was flying so crazily around the room, and in just weird heights and directions, that I just freaking gave up and just started stacking blocks onto each other just to bullshit my way to get the final damage on Kabloom and finally end this cavalcade of not good design choices. Kabloom is more of a mess of a boss fight than it really should be, and it's more of a beast type of boss fight that doesn't really require a backstory, but you probably should have put in some interesting designs character-wise for Kabloom, because just having a rotating flower's head just fly around the room isn't exactly going to stick in the mind of your audience, because it is so simplistic. My recommendation would be to add a root-based body into the boss fight mechanics and to Kabloom's design to make it more interesting. That would be the first thing that I would do to liven this up. I know that the boss fight itself is designed for Kabloom to be a mobile boss, even though it's not really that fun to play, just with the amount of headaches that can come from using the artist form, which is heavily dependent on precise stylus control, which the Nintendo DS has never, ever done exactly right. The Nintendo DS does not do precision entry. That's just a fact of owning the console over years. And yes, even though I emulated this, I still own an actual DS, so I do know what I'm talking about. Kabloom here is a bad boss. The things that were chosen to make the gameplay were not good things to go with. They're badly explained, they don't work like they should, and they end up just annoying the player overall throughout the entire runtime of the boss fight. The first part with the blue flower was good just because you could use range to make up the difference, but when you're in dragon form, you will specifically have short range fire, which isn't good when the room is this big and you have to catch a boss that's just flying around the room on its own accord. I suppose the ultimate thing I can say about it is that you saw in the video, I didn't exactly have a fun time fighting Kabloom. I know that halvesies, that's my fault, but if this is going to be the treatment of the first timers in the developer's mind, then I don't think that I'm being too unfair in saying that the boss fight itself has design problems, because it can be interpreted this badly. I know that the wand is trying to help in giving Wario hints about what costume he's supposed to be in, but some more hints, or at least like a help screen, probably wouldn't have gone amiss in a boss fight like this, especially if it's been dragging on for 10 minutes. You maybe want to give maybe a suggestion or something just on top of what the game is supposed to be. I know a ton of games do that. They'll throw in hints for the player if they're failing over and over and over again in a boss fight. Hell, some bosses will even sometimes have dynamic difficulty, so if you fail at it 7 times, they'll start using less cheap attacks or just slow things down. Like, they'll do something. So, saying that they can't is not exactly a defense of a bad boss fight. I simply just did not have fun with Kabloom. Like, the amount of carrot on a stick dragging throughout this entire Wishstone piece, like the third one we were trying to get, has been annoying in of itself because we've been dragged through 2 levels already trying to get to this thing, only to be stopped by an obtuse boss right when we're about to get it in the first place. It could have been done better, and it should have been done better, and unfortunately I can only give points here that reflect that decision that Suzak made.